There's just a very small handful of guitarists who took their playing to a point where you hear a song and you know right away who it was. Duane Allman was one of those players. Howard Duane Allman was born on November 20th, 1946, and probably started playing a guitar sometime in 1960. That's when his little brother Greg bought his first one. Greg says Duane spent a lot of time borrowing that guitar. Then around a year later, Duane sold an old 165 Harley-Davidson motorcycle he had received as a present for either his birthday or a Christmas present and bought his own guitar. It was said to have been a Les Paul Jr., and this would have been sometime in 1961. 10 years later, Duane would be dead. Even now, long after Duane's death, people talk about what could have been. But this video's not about what could have been, but what was. And it all happened in 10 short years. After getting his own guitar, Duane and little brother Greg would jam and learn songs they heard on the radio. But they were also getting into a lot of trouble, too. Their mom, Jerry, had her hands full trying to raise two boys alone. Her husband, Duane and Greg's father, had been murdered years before in 1949. He had been in the United States Army at the time, so after his death, Jerry had sent the boys off to military school and went back to school herself. She became a CPA, and after she completed her schooling, she took her boys and moved to the Daytona Beach, Florida area. As Duane and Greg headed into their teen years and became a bit hard for her to handle, she decided to send them back up to Castle Heights Military Academy in Lebanon, Tennessee for a second time. It was there the boys would start their first band, called the Misfits. Then Duane was either kicked out, or in Greg's words, Duane just quit the academy and went back home to Daytona. And in the spring of 1964, Greg left the academy too. With both boys back home in Daytona, the brothers started a band, calling it the Escorts. They played local gigs and even opened a show up for the Beach Boys in the spring of 1965. Later on that same year, they changed the name of the band to the Allman Joys. The Allman Joys primarily played a mix of rhythm and blues, soul, and rock covers. The band gained some regional recognition, especially for their live performances. Duane had been playing guitar around 5 years at this time. He was 18 years old, and his reputation was growing. Duane was the kind of person, if he wanted something, he went after it, as one of his friends said at the time. It was best to get out of his way or he'd run over you. I think it was around this time Duane put everything he had into his guitar playing. This was also around the time he first put the slide on his finger. There have been some great slide guitarists. Just to name a few of my favorites: Johnny Winter, Ry Cooder, Billy Gibbons, Warren Haynes, and of course, Derek Trucks, who I consider the best out there today. Now feel free to name some of your favorites in the comments section, as there are many more to choose from. But all of these slide players have something Duane Allman didn't: time. They have all had 30 or 40 years of time to perfect their skills with the slide. Duane had maybe 5 or 6 years at the most to work on his slide playing. I quoted Dickie Betts in another video I did a couple of years back, but I think this really hit the mark on Duane and his slide playing and just his overall guitar work. Dickie said, "Duane Allman was a fantastic interpreter. A lot of people don't realize it. Duane used to tell me a lot that he was influenced by harmonica players more than guitar players. On his slide playing, Duane used to profess to me that slide playing ain't about guitars. It's about harmonica. You got to think like a harp player, and it makes a hell of a lot of sense." Now, I've never heard anybody who plays slide say that. And if you listen to his playing, it does sound like a harmonica. So he had a very unique approach to his music to begin with. He looked at it inside out and outside in and sideways. I think Dickie really shed some light on how the musical mind of Duane works. He was far and away older on the inside than he was on the outside. And I also want to say here, if you listen to his brother Greg sing at a young age, he had the soul of an old man in his voice. Maybe it was something in their genes. I really don't know. Do you? In 1967, Duane and Greg would change the name of their band from the Almond Joys to Hourglass. They would land a contract from Liberty Records and move out to Los Angeles and record a couple of albums, although the albums didn't do too well. If you listen close into and in between the production of these songs, you can hear the promise in Greg's vocals and that Duane's guitar playing had grown up drastically. What was to become the Allman Brothers Band was there, but Duane knew this wasn't the sound they were looking for. So after a few years, they left L.A. In a last-ditch effort after leaving Los Angeles, the Hourglass recorded some demos at the famed studio in Muscle Shoals, Alabama in April of 1968. They laid down a handful of tracks that showed their full potential in the studio. After these tracks were rejected by Liberty, the group returned to the Southeast and did a few more gigs and then called it quits. Fortunately, however, producer Rick Hall and the famed gang were impressed by the demos, and Duane was eventually asked to work on a session which quickly led to steady employment at Fame. Duane would end up camping out at the studio in a tent and later rent a small cabin on a lake close by and do session work for other artists. During his time at the Muscle Shoals studio, Duane would put his mark on some of the most timeless recordings to come out in that era. Wilson Pickett's cover of the Beatles' Hey Jude, Clarence Carter's The Dynamic Clarence Carter, Arthur Conley's More Sweet Soul, and King Curtis's Grammy Award-winning cover of the band's The Weight, which Duane's slide guitar work still to this day will put you in awe. The Wilson Pickett cover of the Beatles' Hey Jude is the song Eric Clapton took notice to hearing Duane's guitar work. Eric said, "I remember hearing Wilson Pickett's Hey Jude and just being astounded by the lead break at the end. I had to know who that was immediately, right now." Later, in 1970, Eric would be sitting front row for an Allman Brothers show, and after inviting them back to Criteria Studios in Miami, Florida, where Duane would lay down a few notes of slide to the song Layla, and in the words of Allman Brothers Band drummer Butch Trucks, put the fire that was missing in that song. Duane Allman would leave his footprints all over the Layla and Assorted Love Songs album. After working sessions at Fame Studio, Duane would decide he wanted to get back to playing in a band again, as he was tiring of session work. He would get the wheels rolling and put together the Allman Brothers Band, and what a great band it was. Some of that early Allman Brothers music I still listen to, and even today will make the hairs on my arms stand straight up. Many label them as a southern rock band, but they were much more than that. Just listen to that Live at the Fillmore album. Songs like Whipping Post and In the Memory of Elizabeth Reed. Maybe they got that label later on after Duane passed away. I don't really know, but I never could understand that southern rock thing at all. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you all think the style of music that the Allman Brothers Band played should be called? Duane loved playing live through those 50-watt Marshalls cranked up to 10. He had one of the best hot tube sounds ever. He played with so much feeling and heart, whether he was in the studio or on stage. His guitar playing stood out head and shoulders among the rest. And to think he only had a little over 10 years to get on that pinnacle. And even 50 years after his death, he's still riding high on that pinnacle in my book. Here's a couple more videos I think you might enjoy. Check them out if you get a chance. Thank you all for watching and supporting the channel.